Frank. We are back, and we are going to start the program this morning by speaking with, what line is he on? Oh, right here, number 8. The Minister of Finance for the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador, the Honourable Member for Humber East, Tom Marshall. Good morning.
Good morning, Randy.
Why did I have this feeling? I had this feeling that I read this story, listened to it on the news, and I said, I bet you I'm going to get to speak with the minister this morning.
What was the story? Was it about
the Dominion Bond Rating Service? I said, good news. We've got this A credit rating. We're wealthy like the Arabs in the Middle East.
Well, I don't know if we're that wealthy, but we're doing well.
We're doing well. The Bond Rating Service says Muskrat Falls presents what it calls a balanced risk. I'm sure you heard me. Did I explain that correctly?
I didn't. I haven't been listening to the show.
Oh, well, you should be listening because I could be talking about you. I explained it this way. They said the Bond Rating Service says Muskrat Falls represents what it calls a balanced risk since cost overruns could increase debt. I explained the balanced risk this way. Like if you have a mortgage, you got a $400,000 house and a $300,000 mortgage. There's a risk you might not be able to pay the mortgage, but what balances it is that you still have the $400,000 asset. Ergo, Muskrat Falls worth, say, $8 billion, $4 billion borrowed against it. That's what balanced risk means. Did I interpret it correctly?
Well, I don't know if that's what they were referring to, but I mean, you're dead on in what you're saying. It's, Muskrat Falls will be an asset to offset the debt, but it's also an asset that will trigger cash flow. And that cash flow will be used to pay the operating expenses of the project and also to pay the interest and principal of the project. So the asset will generate revenues to pay down the debt, so the debt will be gone eventually.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the challenge on cash flow is that there's an impression that 20% or whatever is actually going to be given away, and there's going to be about another 20% of it to 40% of it that we're going to sell below production cost, and so on. These are things that are going to be, I have no doubt, debated ad nauseum in the months to come.
Sure, I don't understand this bit about giving it away. I mean, the people in Nova Scotia are going to build and pay for a $1.2 billion maritime link that we're going to give 1 terawatt-hour of power a year for 35 years to own. So I can't see how anyone can say that's giving it away. Plus the fact that during the 35 years, we're going to be able to get our surplus power on that line for free over to Nova Scotia. So we're not giving anything away. We're making a great deal. I mean, Muskrat Falls, it meets so many of our strategic objectives. And let me talk about that briefly, Randy. It's going to meet our needs on the island of Newfoundland of the people of the province. It's going to get us off Holyrood and get us off burning oil and paying all that money out to Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Iran. And instead, we're going to put it in a project that's going to be built in Labrador. It's also going to meet our needs for the mining industry that's going to develop in lakes we think is going to develop in Labrador through, the Labrador Trough, the iron ore. So it'll get us energy to do that as well. Until that happens, the maritime link, which the Nova Scotians are going to build and pay for initially, we're going to be able to send their surplus power down into spot markets in New York or New England or Nova Scotia or New Brunswick or PEI and monetize it instead of having the water going down the river. We're going to get cash for it. It's like a fisherman who's got some fish. You got a choice. He can dump it. If he doesn't have a market for it, he can either dump it or he can export it somewhere where there is a market. So those 2 points are extremely important. But in addition to that, environmentally, by shutting down Holyrood, it's like taking 330,000 cars off the road. That means something to a lot of people. It'll help us meet 60% of our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Mm-hmm. That means something to a lot of people in this province. Mm-hmm. Also, of course, there's going to be jobs and whatnot throughout the
construction phase and
all that stuff through the 5 years. But the biggest thing of all, and getting back to the Dominion Bond Rating Agency, they talk about one of our challenges is our economic diversification.
Yes.
Diversification. And everybody says, well, we've got to diversify the economy. We've got to diversify the economy. The Board of Trade say it. I hear it all the time. But nobody says how we can do it. It's easy to say it. But how do you do it? I mean, we've been trying with things like aquaculture. We've been trying things in the forestry industry, with the pellet plants and whatnot. But it's not an easy thing to do. Muskrat Falls, though, is the answer. It's something that Danny Williams developed. It's something that Premier Dunderdale has a vision for us to export our surplus power. Now, initially, the surplus fire is coming from Muskrat Falls. But that's going to be clawed back, if you were. It's going to be used eventually in Labrador for the mining industry there. And then that'll free up the line for the things, the energy that we have on the island, the energy we have in Labrador that's not being used right now, the wind and the small hydro projects. So they can be developed then, and they can put on that line and export it down into Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and there'll be a market for it then. So that's the economic diversification, and that means we'll have revenue coming in. You know, as long as the wind blows and as long as the rivers run to the sea, we'll be generating this energy and being able to export it to bring cash back into the province of Newfoundland.
Isn't there a challenge to this debate, though, when we talk about economic diversification, with an awful lot of people saying, okay, we're all caught up in all this energy stuff, we're all caught up in oil and gas, but we aren't really diversifying parts of our economy that are, like you say about Muskrat Falls, that are forever. We don't seem to be as actively engaged, right or wrong, with fisheries matters as we should be. That maybe we're not doing enough in these areas. We're not doing enough to diversify the rural economy. We see rural Newfoundland and Labrador on a longer term basis, Minister, kind of emptying out, is how some people feel about it, and everybody is clustering into 4 or 5 different major urban areas. And
that's happening all over the world. Right?
And that too is that's not just a trend unique to us. Yeah. That's happening all over the world.
Yeah,
but there's a segment.
They want to live in the cities, right? They want to go where the jobs are. They want to go where there's excitement and there's stores and all the things.
Yeah, but there's a section of the population out there, because of our unique demographics and everything else, that can't be necessarily left behind. We see things going on with our fishery, with fisheries production, fisheries processing, etc., where I think an awful lot of people look to your government and say sometimes diversification means the reestablishment, if you would, of what we once had, what once sustained us. And I think people feel the government is not occupied in those matters. Is that I know you're going to say that's an unfair criticism, but why do people feel that way then? Because they certainly do.
Let me tell you this. The district I represent is not a fishing district, but I can tell you that we spend more time in government and in cabinet talking about fisheries more than any other issue. I can assure the people of the province about that. Fisheries is constantly on the agenda. It's constantly having our attention as to what we can do. I certainly don't know the answers. I'll let the fisheries minister, he knows a lot more about it than I do, talk to you more about it in detail. But there's some good signs. I mean, lately I've been reading this information about the cod coming back. But we know we had the cod, and the cod went, and now we got the shellfish, and now the shellfish could be going down, the cod coming back. So there's obviously a lot of things that we can do to help modernize the fishery. But I'll let the fishery minister talk about that. But in the meantime, I'm just using it in terms of the argument we're making vis-a-vis diversification of the economy. Yeah. You see, we're so reliant. This is the other thing the Dominion Bond Rating Service says. You see, we're overly reliant on renewable resources. They talk about the oil and they talk about the minerals, and everybody says that because these things are finite resources. Once they're sucked out of the ground, they're going to be gone. Now, I'm optimistic that we're going to have many years of that. I mean, there's some, the Mizzen project that Statoil has, the field called Ballycatters, and significant license discovery was there. I'm still optimistic about what can happen on the West Coast, and I know there'll be new mineral discoveries. But theoretically, at some point, once it comes out of the ground, it's gone. Mm-hmm. So we have to have something to replace the revenue we're getting, and we're getting an awful lot of revenue from minerals. We're getting an awful lot of revenue in terms of royalties from the oil. Energy can give it to us. Energy is the one thing the world needs, and energy is the one thing the world will continue to need. I'm reading a book right now about China going around the world and buying up commodities, buying up land, and buying up water, buying up oil and buying up commodities. And we're fortunate enough to have those, and we have to do what Premier Dunderdale has talked about over and over and over again. We've got to use those non-renewable resources and convert it into industries that provide us with the renewable revenues. And that's why Muskrat Falls is so important to us, because not only does it meet our needs on the island and our needs in Labrador, but it's the basis for the exportation of the rest of the energy we're going to have in Labrador and on the island, and be able to sell that and turn it into money, and to bring that new money into the province to help support Everyone.
I said the debate
in rural or in urban Newfoundland.
I said that the debate in the House of Assembly, which was something I thought was in my world a waste of time. I've rethought it a little bit, only from the perspective of I think there's an education to come with it. The outcome is obvious, but I said the real debate is going to be the question of do we as Newfoundlanders really need the power? You're arguing that it's bigger than do we need the power. You're arguing this is the future economy.
Well, first of all, we need the power. First of all, we need the power at stable rates because we've got people on fixed incomes, and if we don't do Muskrat Falls, the power is going to go up because we burn so much of it at Holyrood. That's based on oil. Oil prices, we think, are going up. And look, right now the world economy is pretty slow. Yet, what's oil prices? Brent's about $113 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate is about $93 a barrel. That's high. So when Holyrood was commissioned and they first started burning oil to make electricity at Holyrood, it was $3 a barrel. Mm-hmm. Now it's $93 a barrel. It's been $100. It's not going to go down, I don't think. It's going to go higher. So we've got to stop that, and we've got to have stable rates for people on fixed incomes. If we don't do anything, people's rates are going up. I remember Sean Skinner and Jerome Kennedy said about 7% a year. At least if we build Muskrat Falls, it'll only go up 1% a year. So we'll have stable rates for our people and our seniors and people on fixed income. That's number one. Number two, we need it in Labrador because there's going to be this mining explosion there. But number three, we're going to have some surplus. We'll be able to convert the surplus into cash. Then we have, there's hydro sites on the island. There's wind sites on the island. There's a tremendous amount of wind in Labrador. And we'll be able to shoot that down the Maritime Link into New England and get cash for it and bring that cash into the economy to give us royalties to provide the services that the people of Newfoundland and Labrador deserve.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So, any final thoughts before we go?
Well, I read in the paper you said that I had said that this saying that the opposition has its say and the government gets its way, and I remember telling you that. But what you've forgotten is that it was Roger Grimes that said that, not me.
Well, I quoted it. I quoted you.
Passed it on, right?
All right, I quoted you.
So I can't take credit for it.
All right.
But it's only meant to be in terms of when there's a majority government.
Yes.
Right? And you're voting on a resolution or something in the House. I mean, if you have majority government, obviously in the end the government will win the vote. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, the opposition get to have its say, and the people pay attention to that, and the opposition will go on shows like yours and have their say again. And so governments can't be arbitrary. But when the vote comes, they will win in the end. And that's democracy, right? They're the ones that people voted for, right?
Minister Tom Marshall, always a pleasure.
Always great talking to you, Randy.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, Minister Tom Marshall, Minister of Finance, the MHA for Humber East. What do you think of what he had to say this morning? Love to hear from you.